What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show. So today we're going to talk about this default, and we're going to talk about why we are probably going to see a default in the next couple of months and how this debt ceiling default will affect our economy. So that's what we're going to focus on in this video. But first off, if you guys can do me a favor, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that little bell notification, and then click all. By clicking all, you'll get notified anytime we post a video. We do daily videos here, so by clicking the bell notification, clicking all, you should be getting updated every day. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to show you the agenda here, what we're going to be talking about, and I'm going to be going into details about all this different stuff, but we're going to be talking about the House, okay, the House of Representatives. We're going to be talking about the White House. We're going to be talking about the Senate. We're going to be talking about the GOP sees this as a win, okay? If we go into default, the GOP will see this as a win, and why that is, and then we're going to talk about the Speaker and why he can't make changes when it comes to the bill that he's already passed. Okay, so let's talk first about the House. So if you guys didn't know, just last week, the House passed a bill, and this bill is basically, they're tying the debt ceiling to the budget. So they're going to raise the debt ceiling, and they're going to allow like $1.4 trillion until March of next year. And then they also have some cuts. They want to roll back spending levels to what we saw in 2022, which will mean that we'll have to have some cuts in some of the different agencies, okay? Veterans Affairs has already indicated that there'll be cuts in Veterans Affairs. Social Security Administration, they've indicated there'll be cuts as well. Now, when I talk about cuts, especially when it comes to Social Security, I'm not talking about benefits. I'm talking about cuts to the administration, which in turn can slow down benefits. They can slow down the customer service and things like that. And so what the House did is they passed this bill. It was 217 votes in favor of moving forward with this bill, and these were all Republicans that voted for this. You did have 4 Republicans that did not vote for this. They voted against it, and the main reason, at least some of the Republicans have come out and said, look, this is not going to bring down our deficit, and so because it's not bringing down our deficit, I am not for it. It's actually going to add to the deficit over 10 years. It will add about $19 trillion. And so since the House has created this bill, they're not going to back down. Now, they have said that they're open to negotiations, but we're going to talk about the White House and we're going to talk about the Senate, and that's why there's going to be a situation where this is not going to go anywhere. One more thing I want to mention before we get into the White House and how they feel is the debt ceiling and the budget. These are 2 separate things. And what the Speaker McCarthy, is doing is he's trying to bring them together. And this is something that we don't normally see. We normally see a clean debt ceiling, or at least if it's a debt ceiling, they'll add some things to it, but they're not adding the budget. They're adding smaller things to it, and they say, okay, well, you know, we want to raise the debt ceiling, but we do have a few concessions, and these are the concessions. But in this situation, they're talking about the whole budget, and they're talking about the budget for years to come. And so that's why this is a big issue, because realistically, they should be separate. You can raise the debt ceiling so you can pay for all the bills that you already racked up, and then you can talk about the budget for the future, but you shouldn't talk about them together, because one has to be done. The debt ceiling has to be raised. And when it comes to the budget, that's something that you have a little bit of time to work on. You don't have a timetable that needs to be done immediately. That is something that can be put off, and you can focus on the debt ceiling. And so the White House, let's talk about the White House. The White House has indicated they're not going to negotiate the debt ceiling and the budget together. So they've already indicated that. They've been saying this all along. And so right here, we have a stalemate. There's nothing is going to get done because they've both made those statements. The Speaker says we want to tie them together. That's why we passed this bill. The White House is saying we don't want to tie these together. They shouldn't be tied together. You've passed a debt ceiling without the budget before, and we're talking about Speaker McCarthy. So why are you opposed to doing it now? And so that's the White House stance. They're dug in. You have the GOP in the House. They're dug in. The White House is dug in. And now let's talk about the Senate. When it comes to the Senate, they're not even going to take this up. And so they're not going to take this bill up. So normally what would happen is a bill would pass in the House, then it goes to the Senate, and then you have Leader Schumer, who can bring it to the floor. If he wants to bring it to the floor, he can have the discussion. If he wants to have a discussion, he can have a vote. But he is not going to even move forward with that. And on top of that, in the Senate, they're not even going to create a bill where you have the budget and the debt ceiling together. And so what that means is it's not going anywhere in the Senate. Now, looking at the 4th reason, the GOP, or at least we'll talk about the House right now, Republicans in the House, if the economy tanked, then they're just going to blame the president anyway. And most people, most Americans are going to look at this and they're going to look at the president because he's the leader, but they don't understand there's a balance of government and all this stuff needs to come through Congress anyway. So this is not something that the president has control over. The president has to wait for Congress to pass a bill, raising the debt ceiling, passing a budget, all of that stuff. He has to wait for that and then sign off on it. However, the vast majority of the American people don't understand that, so they will blame the president if we go into a default. And so that's one of the things that the GOP could be thinking, look, we don't have to change our bill, because if they don't want to move forward, we're just going to blame the president anyway. And if it actually works, then it could mean that you could have a Republican president come in 2024. And so they're trying to think ahead there, and they're thinking, okay, even worst case scenario, if we go into default, we're still just going to blame the president. And of course, you're going to have Democrats that are going to be blaming the speaker, but most people don't even tie the two together. They're just going to look at the president. They're not even going to think. A lot of people don't even know Speaker McCarthy is the speaker. And so they don't really know who to blame when it comes to that. They can look at one person and say, yes, it's President Biden's fault. It's President Biden's economy. And that's why if something goes wrong, it's going to be all on him. It's kind of like gas prices and all the other stuff that go on, and they don't have to be tied to the president. And in many cases, they're not tied to the president. But we look at it that way because it's the easiest way to try to figure out what's going on. Oh, it's the president's fault. The economy bad, it's the president's fault. And then the last reason here is Speaker McCarthy cannot change this bill. He can't make changes to this bill. He's not going to be able to pass a clean debt ceiling without the budget tied to it, because he made some concessions to become speaker with House members a couple of months ago. So now he can't make any changes. It is what it is. He's going to have these tied together. And so I don't know what the future is going to look like, but at the very least, we are going to come close to a default, if not go into default. Now, the only group that I can see that will make a change when it comes to this, let's say we go into default or we get close to default, you're going to have a lot of corporations, you're going to have a lot of people on Wall Street that are going to be contacting these politicians that are opposed to just raising the debt ceiling. They're going to be contacting them and letting them know, look, I'm not going to support you in 2024 if you go through this, because this is going to hurt not only the American people, but it's going to hurt corporations. It's going to hurt Wall Street. It's going to hurt a lot of people, because if we're on shaky grounds when it comes to paying our bills and things like that, everyone all around the world is looking at us thinking, okay, well, you know what? They're not as stable as we thought they were. And so maybe we won't invest in them. And so this is a very, very serious situation, and politicians should not be playing games right now. And that's what they're doing. They are playing games. The pawns are the American people. That's what they're doing. They're putting us up front and saying, look, if you don't come and meet our demands, then this is what's going to happen. We've been talking about this already for 3 months, and we're going to continue to talk about it because this is something that can truly tank our economy. And right now, when it comes to inflation has been bad in the past. It's starting to get better. We're down to CPI scores down about 5%. Now, that doesn't mean that's 5% across the board. Of course, when it comes to rent, when it comes to groceries, they're still up there. They're still around 8% or even higher. And so this could really put us in a bad situation if we come close to default or we actually default. And so I don't know what's going to happen, but at this point, we just have to kind of hope that cooler heads prevail, and maybe we will have some corporations that step up and say, hey, look, this is not going to happen. You guys are going to have to come to some type of resolution. And maybe what they can do is they can not tie the debt ceiling to the budget, but make the promise that, okay, we'll raise the debt ceiling separately, and then we're going to have talks about the budget and have a separate bill that we'll pass and put a deadline on that, because they have to put deadlines on things. Put a deadline on it, needs to pass by this time, or maybe even raise the debt ceiling for a couple of months while they work on some type of a budget that they can agree on. But something needs to happen. And if it doesn't, then we're going to be in a real bad situation. I want to know what you guys think about all this, so let me know down below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe for more. And I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.